The Islamic faith, as revealed to the Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century, spread rapidly from Arabia across the Middle East and into Asia and Africa, influencing the arts of many cultures. Decorative arts and crafts in particular flourished from the beginnings of Islam. The history of Islamic art in medieval times reflects the power of the ruling dynasties. An early period, from the life of Muhammad to around 1000, was first under the centralized control of the Umayyad dynasty in Damascus, and later the Abbasid dynasty in Baghdad and Samarra. This was followed by a period up to about 1500 in which various dynasties vied for dominance, and invasions from Asia resulted in various regional centers, each with recognizably different artistic cultures, subjects, and styles. At first, Islamic art and architecture was influenced by Byzantine, Roman, and early Christian styles, but a distinctly Islamic style soon emerged. Because of a convention, not a Quranic proscription, forbidding the depiction of people, there was no tradition of easel painting, and artistic expression is seen mainly in architecture and the decorative arts, calligraphy, and the arts of the book. Domed mosques were decorated sumptuously with ceramic and glass mosaics, and carved or painted arabesques, elaborate repeated embellishments using floral, vegetal, or bird-like motifs. These abstract, often geometric, designs were also seen in crafts such as ceramics and textiles, especially carpets. Another profound influence was the written word, specifically the Qurans, in various ornate scripts. Calligraphy was important not only in copies of the Quran, but also as sacred inscriptions in mosques and craftwork decoration. The Dome of the Rock, Temple Mount, Jerusalem, completed 691 CE architecture, especially that of the mosque, has been central to Islamic culture and displays the regional and stylistic variations of Islamic art. Buildings of early Islam became increasingly ornate, with decorative tiles, carved and painted arabesques, and precious metals. Early Islamic art. Calligraphy. 7th to 13th century. The central role of the Quran in Islamic culture has made calligraphy the most revered of its art forms, a visual expression of the spiritual. The art of the book has been central to Islamic art since the first transcriptions of the Quran, and Arabic calligraphy has been a major influence in all the decorative arts. The angular Kufic script was first to gain popularity, but QMS more elaborate and cursive scripts emerged in the early Islamic period, and regional variations developed throughout the following centuries. The finest examples of Islamic calligraphy are naturally to be found in editions of the Quran, often ornately illuminated, but extracts from the Holy Book were also used decoratively in mosques or on ceramics, often in highly stylized, almost abstract, scripts where it is difficult to decipher the meaning of the words. Fragment from a Quran with Kufic script / angular, unadorned Kufic script evolved through the early Islamic period into a number of more elaborate styles, but in areas such as the Maghreb, northern Africa, it was widely used, often without any illumination, until about 1000 CE. 10th century, North African school, vellum. Seljuk-style Quran / He cursive script of this Quran is typical of the Turco-Persian Seljuk dynasty, 11th to 14th century. In addition to the elegant calligraphy, the text is illuminated with sunburst marks and marginal decorations depicting small trees. 13th century, vellum, Museum of the Holy Masama Shrine, Qom, Iran. CLOS Irluk. Illuminations. The illuminations in the margin, like those within the text, are not merely decorative but are designed as an aid to the correct reading of the Holy Book. As well as marking the sections of the text, they also indicate the points for prostration. Mosaic. 7th to 13th century. One of the distinguishing features of Islamic architecture is the intricate and extensive decoration of both interior and exterior surfaces. Alongside carved and painted decorations, tile work and mosaic played a major role from the first Islamic buildings such as the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, completed 691, using techniques of Byzantine mosaic but in non-representational geometric and arabesque patterns, and the Great Mosque of Damascus, 715, which unusually also has a mosaic depicting buildings and an imaginary city. Through the 8th century, the use of mosaic decoration spread as far afield as Spain, where it can be seen in the Great Mosque of Cordoba and later in the Alhambra. Specific styles such as zillage, using purpose-made tiles, were developed in the Arabic countries and North Africa. And in Eurasia in the 13th century, Seljuk mosques and palaces were decorated with richly colored glazed tiles. The Dome of the Rock, Temple Mount. This earliest extant example of Islamic building is essentially Byzantine in structure, but its mosaic decoration in repeating geometric patterns is distinctly Islamic. The rich blues and greens are typical of the mosaics of early Islamic architecture. Completed 691 C, Jerusalem, Israel. Mosaic above a doorway of the prayer hall. Originally a Christian church, the mezquita was rebuilt as a mosque by a succession of Islamic rulers from 785. Among the alterations was the addition of mosaics in the prayer hall of the extension built by Al-Hakam I.961-66 C, Great Mosque of Cordoba, Spain. Courtyard arcade, riwak, and vaulted entrance, Iwan. Islamic decoration was integrated into Persian architecture under the Abbasid dynasty, producing mosques with large courtyards enclosed by elegant arcades with an iwan, a vaulted porch, decorated with colorful arabesque tilework. C 1121-22 C, Masjid-i-Jome Mosque, Isfahan, Iran. Glass and ceramics, 7th to 13th century. As with the decorative arts, crafts such as ceramics and glasswork assumed a great importance in Islamic culture, achieving the status of fine art. Craftsmen in Baghdad developed a tin glaze technique to imitate Chinese porcelain, while the process of using metallic overglazes to produce lusterware spread from Egypt throughout the Islamic world. Persia adopted the techniques in the 10th century. It became a major center for ceramic production and introduced faience, alkaline glazed ware. Innovations in glasswork included Fatimid Egypt's cut glass and luster-painted glass, and Syria's enameled glass lamps. Ewer with birds. The finest early Islamic glasswork came from Egypt, and especially prized were the carved rock crystal pieces produced towards the end of the Fatimid dynasty. Fatimid period, late 10th century, rock crystal, Louvre, Paris, France. Jug with molded decoration, a feature of many 12th century Persian pots, was calligraphic decoration. The words, glory, and prosperity, can be seen in the glaze of this jug. Iran, 12th century, stone paste with turquoise glaze, height 21.8 centimeters. Bowl from Kashan, Iran. An overglaze containing metal oxides gave Seljuk pottery a gold-like finish, and sometimes incorporated painted illustrations in the style of Persian miniatures. 1211-12 C, stone paste with luster overglaze, diameter 20 centimeters, Ashmolean, Oxford, UK. In context. Islamic culture in the medieval period encouraged scientific learning, continuing a long tradition of scholarship in mathematics and astronomy in particular. Craftsmen were also often innovative in their use of new materials. Transcriptions. Islamic scholars also studied other civilizations' achievements, translating the works of philosophers and scientists, as in this edition of Greek physician Dioscorides de Materia Medica, transcribed in the 13th century. South Asia includes the areas now covered by modern India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and other small Himalayan states. In the first millennium C, many ideas on religion, philosophy, and the arts came from these areas and were expressed in the sacred texts, icons, and temples of Buddhism and Hinduism. The Internet of the medieval world was formed by a network of trade routes that linked China to India and Rome, and later the Arab states. The complex overland network was called the Silk Route because it transported the precious fabric the world desired and whose production method the Chinese kept secret. The more southerly maritime trade route carried Roman technology, Chinese ceramics, and spices. However, its most precious cargo was ideological, including Indian ideas of religion, statesmanship, art, languages, Sanskrit and Pali, and writing scripts. Influences. India was a treasure house of religion, philosophy, art, and technology for the smaller nearby states that came into formation in the first millennium. The great stupas of India erected to hold relics of the Buddha, the temples dedicated to the Hindu universal gods Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, as well as the precisely ordered layout of Indian cities, were all the product of the long intellectual tradition of the Vedas, the Brahmins, and Buddhist monks. The great Indian religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism, waxed and waned throughout the Middle Ages, as did the political dynasties that sought supernatural support from them. But the subcontinent's constant creative impulse towards art, philosophy, and metaphysics made India the cultural fulcrum of Asia. China had an enormous technological and commercial impact, but India was the crucible of fundamental notions of man, the gods, the city, the state, and of the art that could capture and embellish these notions. Art that was to act as a principal stimulus to the fledgling states forming between India and China. The Dome of the Rock, Temple Mount, Jerusalem, completed 691 CE architecture, especially that of the mosque, has been central to Islamic culture and displays the regional and stylistic variations of Islamic art. Buildings of early Islam became increasingly ornate, with decorative tiles, carved and painted arabesques, and precious metals. South Asia. Buddhist art. 1st century BC, 8th century CE. One of the most important Buddhist discoveries was the excavation of a 1st century BCE to 3rd century CE mound at Amaravati in eastern India. Artifacts discovered included slabs of carved limestone from a collapsed Buddhist stupa. During the golden age of the Gupta Empire in India around 450 CE, the image of the Buddha, with lowered eyes, placid features, long ears, short, snail-shell, curls of hair, and cranial bump, was invented in the city of Mathura. This image was refined at the city of Sarnath on the Ganges, where it was adopted by the many Buddhist communities that sprang up across Asia between the 4th and the 11th centuries, and it became a universal icon of peace, power, and reflection. Before the start of the first millennium, Buddhism also crossed from India to Sri Lanka. Among the innovations of the Sri Lankan Buddhists were ceremonies centered on colossal images of the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, one who helps others achieve enlightenment, Avalokiteshvarta, Are, Maitreya, and Manjushri. In the 5th century, the renowned monk and scholar Buddhaghosa assembled the Pali language texts of the Buddhist canon and secured the island's place as the headquarters of southern Theravada. Way of the Elders, Buddhism, a status it still holds today. Tanding Buddha/he/Androlobhisotthis Gupta Empire Buddha betrayed the Buddha's earlier status as a prince who wore heavy gold earrings. This Buddha has a circular halo of concentric floral bands and diaphanous robes. 5th century CE stone, Government Museum, Mathura, India. Amaravati Jislab from Great Stupa at Amaravati shows a detailed depiction of the stupa itself. On the other side is a group worshipping at the spot where the Buddha received enlightenment. 1st century BC to 3 RD century CE stone, 124 by 86 centimeters, British Museum, London, UK. Tara this 8th century gilded bronze from Sri Lanka Isof Tara, the consort of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Tara's right hand is held in the position of Aradamudra, the gesture of giving. Idas cast a known piece and Ison off the finest Asian figure bronzes. 8th century, gilded bronze, British Museum, London, UK. Hindu art. India, 5th to 13th century. The Gupta Empire of northern India produced sacred art of unsurpassed beauty. The Dashavatara temple at Deoghar in Orissa on the east coast has red sandstone walls paneled with deeply cut narrative scenes of the god Vishnu. Northern Indian temple building reached its height in the temples at Khajuraho, capital of the Kandela kings from the 10th to the 12th century. The Sun Temple at Konark on the shore of the Bay of Bengal is the largest of Orissa's shrines. The 70-meter-high temple is constructed in the form of the chariot of the sun god Surya, with 7 life-size horses pulling the vast temple on 24 huge wheels. In the south of India, the Chola dynasty of the Tamils became the most powerful empire in this part of the world from the 9th to the 13th century. As well as building great temple complexes, they were masters of bronze. Their greatest icon is Shiva Nataraja, Lord of the Dance, who dances the creation and destruction of the universe. Surya Temple, Konark. The temple's 24 giant 14-meter diameter wheels have 16 spokes and are carved with spiraling floral motifs in a spectacular design that makes the whole mass of stone look capable of rolling forward. 13th century stone, Konark, Orissa, India. Dashavatara Temple, Deoghar. Here, Vishnu sleeps in potent, majestic ease on the pneumatic coils of the giant, multi-headed serpent Ananta, representing the pre-Hindu serpent cults. Vishnu dreams into existence a new Kalpa, Eon, for the universe, as four-headed Brahma rises above him on a lotus flower to implement his creation. C500C stone, Diagar, India. Shiva Natraja / his Chola period bronze shows Shiva holding the small Damara drum of creation in his upper right hand and a burst of the fire of destruction in his upper left hand. His lower right hand signals, "Have no fear," and the lower left hand points to his uplifted left leg, signifying release or salvation. 12th century bronze, 97 by 83 centimeters, National Museum of India, New Delhi, India. Cielosariac. Ganga, the goddess Ganga, personification of the river Ganges, floats in Shiva's flowing ascetics _locks. Ganga holds her palms together to venerate equals Shiva as the source of all, including the cool waters of the mighty river named after her which flow down from Shiva's Himalayan home. Kandaria Mahadev Temple, Khajuraho / Hegadsapur at times with aristocratic arrogance, posturing in jewel-bedecked minimal courtly dress. Here Agni, the ancient Vedic Godophyrian destruction, poses with foppish waxed mustache and soft, swelling girth. 12th century stone, Khajuraho, Madhya Pradesh, India. From 800 to 1400, recently formed states in Southeast Asia such as Cambodia and Srivijaya, Indonesia, constructed the largest elaborately carved stone temples in the world for the veneration of Buddhist and Hindu deities. Artists and craftsmen were highly prized in the courts of medieval Southeast Asia. However, artists did not leave their names on their works until colonialists arrived centuries later and introduced this European convention. As a result, we will never know the names of the artists and architects who conceived and constructed Borobudur, Angkor Wat, and the Ananda Temple, some of the most beautiful sacred monuments that have ever been built. State art. The sculptors and architects in the royal workshops who built Borobudur in Java and Angkor Wat in Cambodia were of great value to the state. This was because they alone could create the stone temples that were believed to mirror the heavenly homes of the gods. It was believed that the gods came down and occupied these temples during religious festivals, so conferring power and prosperity on the earthly kingdom. From the slopes of the volcanoes of Java and from the Kulen mountain north of Angkor, tons of stone was carved by hand from surface quarries and transported by river on rafts before being hauled into position to make the walls of these monuments. Finally, masons perched on bamboo scaffolding with simple iron chisels carved at the surface of the rock with narrative scenes from the Hindu and Buddhist epics, beautiful goddesses, and scrolling foliage swirls. The Ananda Temple at sunrise, built by King Kyanzitha around 1090, the Ananda Temple, seen here at sunrise, is one of the finest surviving temples of the pagan empire. Southeast Asia. Borobudur. Java, Indonesia, 750 to 850 C. The arrival of the new Shailendra dynasty, Lords of the Mountain, in 760 C, possibly from eastern India, gave the naturally artistic people of Java and Indonesia an opportunity to express their art on a monumental scale, and they created the most impressive and beautiful Buddhist monument ever built. The largest Buddhist shrine in the world, Borobudur Isatansa Stupa, holding holy relics, a mystical mandala, or cosmic diagram, and a mountain of narratives in stone that show the way to Buddhist enlightenment. The monument, constructed from 1,000,000 blocks of volcanic rock, and set like a mantle on a natural hill, rises in singular splendor from a fertile plain of rice paddies. The lower galleries are superbly carved with intimate tales of Buddhist heroes. Monks and elite visitors would ascend the summit for ceremonies, where 72 icons of the supreme tantric Buddha, Vairocana, sit inside lattice stone stupas looking out over the plain to the nearby volcanoes. Temple of Borobudur, 72 supreme Buddhas, their hands turning the Buddhist wheel of the law, sit on top of the monument inside elegant lattice stupas that look out to the surrounding volcanoes. Below them 500 other Buddhas, concentrated but gentle, face the quarters of the universe they control. 778 to 850 stone, Borobudur, Java, Indonesia. Borobudur carvings tables about royal courts and Buddhist heroes, all rendered in a close-up, social style that is uniquely Javanese, stretch along the four square galleries that mount like a pyramid towards the cosmic Buddhas at the summit. 778 to 850 stone, Borobudur, Java, Indonesia. Angkor, Cambodia, 800-1400 C. In 800 CE, the ancient Cambodians started to build brick temples to the Hindu god Shiva in the lakeside region of Angkor. By 1200 CE, they had built the largest, lavishly sculpted, stone monuments in the world with highway, canal, and hospital networks that stretched from Burma to the Malay Peninsula and Vietnam. The largest temple is the vast and palatial Angkor Wat dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu. The temple's 5 majestic towers rising within a 1,000 square kilometer walled enclosure and 190-meter wide moat represent the home of the gods on Mount Meru. The second largest temple, the Bayon, marks the historical switch of the ancient Cambodians to Buddhism in spectacular fashion with its 59 towers bearing giant faces of a supreme protective Buddha rising high into the air at the center of a new citadel in the capital called Angkor Thom. Angkor Wat, behind a 190-meter wide moat and elaborately carved galleries, rise the 5 central towers of the high central, Bakan, section where the king and court Brahmins performed the rituals necessary to appease the gods. The temple is the largest stone monument on earth. 12th century, stone, height 65 meters, Angkor, Cambodia. Clos Luke. Goddesses. The walls of Angkor Wat are carved with thousands of goddesses in flimsy courtly dress and with exotic hairstyles. In Hindu belief, their radiated female essence resonated with the male essence of the king and Brahmins, and elevated them to a state where they could communicate with the gods. Buddha face, Bayon Temple Town. 100 giant faces of Buddhas look out with staring eyes and gentle Cambodian smiles from the Bayon Temple and from the gates of the new citadel, Angkor Thom. 1181 to 1219, stone, Angkor, Cambodia. Pargan, Burma, 1000 to 1300 CE. By the 11th century, Pagan began to develop rapidly as a Buddhist kingdom under King Anuruddha, reigned 1044 to 77. His successor, King Kyanzitha, who reigned from 1084 to 1113, purged the northern Mahayanist Buddhist sects from Pagan and promoted southern Theravada Buddhism, which it still follows today. Burmese temples are distinguished by their murals and frescoes. The vast Ananda temple is covered with internal murals that were explicitly designed to plant Theravada Buddhist thoughts in the minds of subjects. Ananda was in constant use, and endowments by later kings resulted in further murals being painted. Fresco, Ananda temple. In this court scene, the dancers have been painted for visibility with bright turquoise and ochre. Fresco, Ananda temple, Bagan, Burma. Standing Buddha. At the heart of the Ananda temple stand 4 huge gilt wooden Buddhas measuring 9 meters high and representing Gautama Shakyamuni and the 3 earlier Buddhas, Kakosanda, Kassapa, and Kanagamanda. Wood 9M, Bagan, Burma. Sukhothai, Thailand, 1250 to 1350 CE. As the great Cambodian Empire began to decline after the death of its greatest king Jayavarman VII in about 1220, the western provinces of the empire began asserting their independence. For some centuries, gifted and technologically advanced Thai people had been gradually descending the valleys from Yunnan, southwest China. On the Yam River, in central northern Thailand, arose Sukhothai, the first great city of the Thais. The rulers of Sukhothai inherited the Khmer tradition of grandiose temple construction and quickly demonstrated their already enhanced technological skills in bronze casting and ceramics under King Ramkhamhaeng, who ruled from 1279 to 98. Vast temple parks with gigantic standing and seated Buddhas were constructed from brick and stucco, and the distinct Buddhist culture of the Thai people was founded. The Buddha at the moment of victory. Bronze images of the Buddha achieved unsurpassed classical status at the first Thai kingdom of Sukhothai. The smooth limbs, lowered eyes, and flame rising from the Buddha's head produce a powerful effect of serenity. Bronze, height 92 centimeters, Walters Art Museum, Baltimore, U.S. After centuries of division, China became a unified empire in 581, and the arts flourished under the patronage of successive emperors. The period of the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907, in particular, is regarded as a golden age of Chinese art and literature. The ruthless conquests of Emperor Wendy brought China under the single rule of the Sui dynasty, paving the way for an unprecedented period of cultural achievement. Trade with India and the Middle East brought contact with craftsmen and artists that reinvigorated Chinese art. Buddhism, which had spread from India, became in effect the national religion when it was adopted by the imperial family. Imperial patronage. The empire continued to grow under the Tang dynasty. The increased prosperity enabled the building of large cities, such as the capital Chang'an, modern Xi'an, which quickly became important cultural centers. Tang emperors were enthusiastic patrons of the arts, attracting the finest artists and craftsmen to their palaces from as far afield as Persia. The reign of Xuanzong in the 8th century was the height of the Tang period. Calligraphy and traditional figure painting flourished in his court, but landscape painting also emerged as an important genre. Unfortunately, Xuanzong was not so successful politically, and his reign ended in civil war and a fragmentation of the empire. Reunification. Stability returned to China in 960 when the empire was reunified under the Song dynasty in Dianliang, modern Kaifeng, and a rise in maritime trade produced the wealth to allow the arts to flourish again. Emperor Huizong, reigned 1101-25, encouraged landscape painters, and there were also a growing number of literati, scholamature, painters working outside the courts. Eventually conquered in the north by the Jin, the Song continued to rule south of the Huai River until 1279, when Kublai Khan united China once again, but under the divisive rule of the Mongol Yuan dynasty. Silver bottle, Tang dynasty Western influences, such as Persian techniques and design, were noticeable during the Tang period, 618 to 907. Silver, height 20 centimeters, Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, Massachusetts, U.S. East Asia. Tang dynasty, 618 to 907. Under the Tang dynasty, musicians, poets, and artists enjoyed imperial patronage and Chinese culture prospered. The adoption of Buddhism led to the building of temples, pagodas, and tombs, decorated with wall and silk paintings, and containing ceramic figures and pots, and emperors attracted the finest artists and craftsmen to their courts. Taizong, reigned 626-49, employed the two brothers Enlide and Yanliben, who revitalized the art of figure painting, but the height of Tang art was reached under Xuanzong, reigned 712-56. His court at Chang'an included the great poet and artist Wang Wei, and attracted the most prominent painters of the day, such as the traditional figure painters Wu Dozi and Han Gan, and also a group of artists including Li Xixuan, Li Dao Dao, and Wang Yamo, who were responsible for establishing the landscape as an important genre in Chinese art. Groom with horses Han Gan, sponsored by Wang Wei. Han Gan became the foremost painter of the Tang court. He painted many portraits and figure paintings, but was best known for his sensitive portrayals of horses. 8th century, watercolor on paper, Musée Cernuschi, Paris, France. The court instructress writing the admonitions, Gu Kaiji. The 4th century artist Gu Kaiji was revered as the greatest of all painters by scholars in the Tang period, and inspired many figure painters of the time. Most famous of his paintings was the series of illustrations for Zhang Hua's parody The Admonitions of the Instructress to the Court Ladies, of which this is an 8th century copy. British Museum, London, UK. Emperor Wudi of Northern Zhou Dynasty, the 13 Emperors, Yanliben as a government official and portrait artist in Emperor Taizong's court. Yanliben painted a number of important historical figures. The best known, a hand scroll depicting 13 emperors from the Han to Sui dynasties, follows the tradition of figure painting established by Gu Kaiji. C 600-673, ink and color on silk, 51.3 by 531 centimeters, Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, Massachusetts, U.S. Song Dynasty, 960-1279. After Xuanzong's abdication in 756, China was not reunited until the Song Dynasty. At first governed from the north, it was less expansionist than previous dynasties, devoting more energy to culture. International trade prompted advances in the crafts, especially ceramics, and the imperial courts attracted artists such as Dong Yuan, Guixi, and Zhu Ran, whose elegant landscapes became very different from the painting of contemporary Taoist literati. He-Jin invasion drove the Song south to Linnan, modern Hangzhou, where Gaozong founded the Southern Song dynasty, 1127 to 1279. Landscape painting developed in this era, led by Ma Yuan and Xia Gui, into a more atmospheric, gentler style than that of the Northern Song. Wintry groves and layered banks. Dong Yuan's elegant style was marked by carefully balanced composition using sophisticated perspective and a wide range of brushstrokes. C950, hanging scroll, ink and color on silk, 181.5 x 116.5 centimeters, Kurakoa Institute of Ancient Cultures, Hyogo, Japan. Bare willows and distant mountains. Ma Yuan. The landscapes of Ma Yuan mark the high point of Southern Song painting. His unusual compositions based on diagonals earned him the nickname One Corner Ma. Incan light Kalurin silk, 23.8 x 24.2 cm, Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, U.S. Early spring Guixi. Many elements of his almost abstract compositions are shown in this work. Subtly different textures and brushstrokes emphasize the symbolic significance of the mountains and trees and give a three-dimensional feel. 1072. Hanging scroll, ink and light colors on silk, 158 by 108 centimeters, National Palace Museum, Taipei, Taiwan. Yuan Dynasty, 1279 to 1368. Although the Mongol invasion under Kublai Khan reunited North and South China, the Yuan dynasty was nevertheless a foreign occupation. The empire stretched as far as Eastern Europe, bringing many new influences to the arts and revitalizing trade and crafts. But the Yuan were not great patrons of fine arts. Mongol discrimination against the Chinese meant only a few native artists worked under imperial patronage. A class of literati, including the four great late Hap Yuan masters Huang Gongwang, Wu Jin, and Aizan, and Wang Meng, rejected the Mongol rule and what they saw as its vulgar influence, and instead developed a more allegorical style of landscape painting in the Chinese tradition. Rebellions after Kublai Khan's death led to the overthrow of the Yuan, and the succeeding Ming dynasty was more appreciative of native Chinese art. Landscape and eyes on this artist refused to work under the Mongol rulers. He painted landscapes almost exclusively, often in an austere monochrome, tending to abstraction in which balance of composition was of prime importance. Pen and ink on paper, Osaka City Museum, Japan. Horse and groom in winter. Zhao Mingfu. After the Mongol invasion, Zhao was one of the few court artists. Horses, important to the Mongol way of life, often feature in his paintings, whose archaic style was influenced by Chinese art history. Ink on paper, National Palace Museum, Taipei, Taiwan. Dwelling in the Fujian Mountains. Huang Gongwang. After serving as a court official and being wrongfully imprisoned for misconduct, Huang Gongwang became a Taoist priest. He retreated to the Fujian Mountains where, rejecting the Yuan emperor's style, he painted some of his finest landscapes in ink on paper with brushstrokes akin to calligraphy. 1347 to 1350, hand scroll, ink on paper, height 33 centimeters, National Palace Museum, Taipei, Taiwan.